So you want to build a Makiwara, huh? Okay. It shows you've got a little bit of brains if you want to make your own Makiwara. Because the truth is, the stuff that I've seen sold, and I have used a lot of the things they sell, they're just garbage. A Makiwara, essentially, by definition, since it's an Okinawan word, Maki, the word means wrapped. That's correct, wrapped. For example, Maki sushi. Your sushi is wrapped in nori. Wara, well, that is a particular kind of rope. It is made from rice. That's right. It was cheap. It was used for packaging way back when. Nowadays, of course, we don't use that. We use other things. In fact, we've gotten fairly modern with what we wrap our packages and everything else to secure them. But back then, it was dirt cheap, it was available, and it served its purpose. So you would wrap wara around your post that you were going to be punching, and you just slam away. Back then, they made kind of a little pad out of it. They didn't just wrap it around. They made a little pad first of several pieces of the wara. Then they kind of wrapped it, and after that they tied it to the post that they were going to be punching on. Now I know you've probably seen, since you're listening to this, you've probably seen little diagrams of how you can stick a board in the ground with rock, a big rock on one side and a big rock on the other side to give it some bend and keep it secure. That's really modern. According to Oyata, the original Makiwaras were made from a particular kind of tree that was grown in Okinawa, and they would cut the tree, they would shape it the way they wanted it, and the roots of the tree, of course, would hold it in place. Now, he said the tree had a property where it did not rot at the roots. So you could use it for years on end without worrying about things. I don't know what kind of trees those were, and we most definitely don't have them. So what we do is we tend to use boards. Well, in order to make mine, and you have to understand this, mine is designed to be put up on concrete. I don't think the wooden beams in your house will put up with the damage that this particular item can make. I don't think you would enjoy the vibrations and all of the other problems inherent with hooking this up to something made of wood. Unless, of course, it was a tree. So when I make mine, I embed their anchors in concrete. Not block walls, concrete. You know, the kind of stuff you would have in your basement. If you have a basement. You know, where I come from, almost everybody has a basement. You need a board. I use 2x4. Very simple 2x4. My board that you're looking at is 1 meter long. That's close enough to a yard. There's not much difference. Actually, you'd probably want it to be about 40 inches long. There are 2 other pieces from the 2x4 that are cut out so they are square. So if your 2x4 is 2x4, they will be 4 inches square and 2 inches deep. The other little tools you're going to need some tools, yeah. You're going to need a drill. You're going to need some drill bits. I'm using 2 wood bits, one large enough to allow the anchor bolt to go through and into the concrete, through the boards, and another one which is much wider that allows me to place not just my not just my wrench, or in this case, well, it's a wrench, but it allows me to place it in place, but it also allows me to put a couple of washers, one bigger washer that will help distribute the pressure a little bit wider, and I countersink it into the wood. I'd say about an inch into the wood or so. You're also going to need your concrete bit. You're going to need pencils. You're going to need the anchor bolts. Now these are the kind that I use. You drive into the concrete, and as you screw them in, it tightens them. So when you make your hole in the concrete, make it at least so when you remove your Makiwara, because you can't take these things out normally, make it so you can pound it in the full distance, and then at that point I assume you can just plaster over it or whatever you do with concrete. Now that you've got your items, you're going to want to take your board and place one of the little 4x squares on the end that you want to use for your main anchor. After you've done this, you'll want to make a pencil mark along the outer edge of your 4x4 piece, and then you want to take your little T-square or L-square, whatever it is, and you want to draw two lines at 45 degrees, and once you've completed that, you'll find that you've made a little X in the middle. That is the point at which you're going to want to drill. Now, from this, I take my wood bit, the big one, and I put it directly down so the little pointy part is right on the X, right where they intersect. And then I'm going to drill into the wood. Now, like I said, I went about maybe an inch, possibly less. Doesn't really matter. When you've finished with the hole, you'll notice that it is nice and circular and round, and there's another little dot right in the middle. That little dot is where you're going to place your smaller drill bit. So at this point, I take my drill and I drill all the way through the board. Yeah, all the way through. As you can see in the pictures, the hole goes all the way through. Now, what I do next is I take the little 4x4 piece and I put it directly underneath the small hole. I put my drill bit into it and I drill all the way through that one. And because I was a smart little person, I also put the second piece underneath it. Got to make sure that they're in position correctly when you do this. And I drilled through the first one and slightly into the second one. Pictures show exactly what I've done. Now at this point, I complete my drilling through the second one, and I basically completed that particular part of what I want to do. Now I have to find a place where I have concrete. So in this case, with me, I'm lucky. I've got concrete pillars that are holding up the roof, and they're connected to the pillar, which goes down underneath and into the ground. I find a place that I want to make, and in this case I've taped it off a little bit so you can see kind of where I want to do it. Now when I put it together, I actually figured out where the hole was by lifting the board up, and I lifted it up so it was approximately solar plexus high. The 4 to 5 or 6 inches on the top corresponded to my solar plexus height. And this is how I figured out the height where I wanted to drill. Because when I punch it, I want to be punching solar plexus height. I don't want to be punching higher or lower. I want my hand to come in straight, solar plexus height to me. There's a couple of reasons for this. The main one being I'm training my vision. Yeah. I'm training my hand to go in the middle of what I'm looking at. So if I'm looking at someone, I want that middle punch to go directly into the center. And most of the time when you look at somebody and you're looking them in the face, that center will be their solar plexus. Now I drill the hole, as the next picture is going to show. I've drilled the hole in the concrete where I want my anchor bolt to go. I now take my board and I put the anchor bolt through my punching board and through the little 4x4 board that goes underneath it. Now you notice in the picture I've got my second one up a little bit. Now what that is doing, that's helping me to keep the board away from the wall up at the top, and allows me to actually, because it's kind of wedged in there, it allows me to get the board so it will be level, straight up and down. You can see another picture of the bolt in there, and the board is there, and I've hammered that into the wall. So it's gone through my board, it has gone through the second one, and it is now in the wall. Once I've done that, I tighten it and make sure it's nice and tight, and then I position the second little 4x4 so that the top of the board, when it is struck, the top of the board, when it is struck with that little piece in there, so the board moves just slightly more than 1.5 inches. Now the reason for that is once I tighten, that's right, once I tighten the second one in, that board will be even stiffer. So I want the board to move at least an inch, but not more than that. Well, I'm somewhere within it. 3/4 of an inch, 1.25 inches, something along that line. I want give at the top of my board. I don't want the thing not giving. That will damage the bones in my hand. You've probably seen these guys walking around with big monster knuckles, and they look really rough and tough. Okay. So they look rough and tough. They've damaged their knuckles. They've damaged their bones. And true, they might be able to hit very, very hard with it, but the truth is they're not going to fool too many people with those big monster knuckles. Almost anybody can take one look at your hand with those big things on it and know that either you have had some kind of horrible accident or you are a martial artist and you think you are deadly. Okay. My hands are smooth and nice. The skin is not all calloused up and rough. Yeah, my knuckles are a bit bigger, but that had a lot to do with Korea and the training that I had before I'd learned that you don't want to do that. But at this point I want give, and I'm also going to put padding on it. So next I'm going to position that little 4x4 piece, and once I've got its exact position, notice how it was kind of hanging outside, I knew right where its center was. And so I know the center of the board, I know the height I want, so I drill the next hole. I also had the little board behind it, not centered, because when I drilled the hole I didn't want to mess up the hole on the other side that I'd already drilled. So I kind of drilled into the side of it a little bit. No big deal. That's not important. Now that I've drilled that hole, I center the other hole in the little 4x4, and I make sure also, before I do anything more, that the board is straight up and down. It's level. Straight up and down. I use a leveler. You got a nice picture of it. With that in mind, I move the little 4x4 so the hole is exactly lined up. And then, because I did not do this before, and the reason I didn't do it before is because I did not know. I did not know where that second hole had to go. So I didn't drill it. I did it after I got all the things. Now I take that big bit, and you can see that baby chewed a hole in there. The reason is because you're not starting at the beginning. You're now sticking it into, you're trying to stick the middle of it into a hole that already exists. And believe me, it chatters around, and it just, as you can see, it's rough. It's wider than the one on the bottom because of this. But I managed to get it down so it was leveled. And then I put my bolt through it. Okay, I've got the bolt through it. I hammer it in. You can see how it looks. It's been hammered in, recessed. And at this point, I tighten it. Okay, the board's straight up and down. It's anchored very nicely. I've got slight amount of give on the top. So, am I stupid? Am I going to punch it with my bare skin and my knuckles? No, because even the Okinawans back then knew you don't do that. Notice I mentioned the Chinese. Oh yeah, the Chinese didn't have Makiwaras, did they? Ooh, no they didn't. If you take a look at their historical records, you'll find that 400 years ago, maybe now it's going on close to 5, because it was a half a century ago I was talking about this to Master Oyata. But back before the cultural exchanges between the two countries, China was known for having an open hand method of combat. They didn't close their fist very often, whereas the Okinawans used the closed fist. And Oyata told me, but way back when, that was how you could tell the difference between a Chinese stylist and an Okinawan stylist. Basically, martial artists, let's put it like that. It was whether they used empty hand or closed hand techniques more. If they trained in which one they trained in. The Okinawans trained in the closed hand form. So, as you can see, I put some closed cell foam on top of my Makiwara. Now that's not 4 inches. It's probably about 6 or 7 inches. And also I use zip ties to tie it down. I'll admit it. They break after a while. It's out in the sun, so they're going to break after a while. I just replace them. They're dirt cheap. The padding, as I punch on it, is going to collapse. I've actually double padded mine. I put 2 layers of the closed cell foam on it. And it's the same kind of stuff you'll find in your shin guards, the good ones. It's not this foamy foam rubber kind of stuff. It's a hard closed cell foam that can take a lot of abuse. And I abuse it a lot because I enjoy punching my punching post every single day. It is a Makiwara. It has the proper amount of give. It has a very good protective covering to keep my skin from being torn up. Now, the purpose of the Makiwara is not to build up the calluses or the skin underneath your knuckles. I know there are people who say it is, and there are people who go, Ooh la la, the skin moves. It's not stuck down to your knuckle. No. But then again, well, it is more than sufficient what I have. As Oyata said, if I cannot punch someone with 60% of my power into his body with my fist, and he's talking about into the chest, if I cannot do that and kill him with that strike, I have to go back to training. Obviously, I'm not good enough yet. The purpose of the Makiwara is to develop the alignment. Yeah, the alignment of your bones, your hand, your wrist, and there's a lot of little bones in the wrist, with your forearm, and to allow you to apply full power, that's right, full power into your strikes as you would on the street. Just drilling it in as hard as you can. Now this helps develop your hip movement also. This helps you develop the power in your strike, which means you learn your distancing. You learn the timing involved with the biomechanics of your body, and you strengthen the bones in the arm that is striking, the ligaments, the joints, everything, so it doesn't bend. Yeah, so it does not bend when you hit someone, so they get the benefit of your gift to them. Remember, you want to hit with the first knuckle. You hit with the first knuckle, the way your hand is designed. The second knuckle will rock down and join with the first one, spreading the impact out over both of them. Both. Not the other knuckles, not the other bones in your hand. It's called a boxer's fracture for a good reason. When you strike someone with your little finger, the metacarpal bone breaks, because that is the smallest bone in the palm of your hand. It's the smallest one, and it breaks. And it breaks constantly. Boxers, because boxers do not strike with the first two knuckles. Their hand is wrapped up. They've got it inside a glove. They've been on the bag. They don't have something like a Makiwara. They've been punching on the bag. The bag is terribly forgiving when you make a mistake with your punch. They learn not to bend it, yes, but they strike many, many times with the bottom three knuckles instead of the top two. And when you strike with the bottom three knuckles and you hit something hard, like your opponent's head or an elbow or other thing that you don't want to hit, that little bone breaks. And it is so common amongst boxers that the doctors call that fracture a boxer's break, a boxer's fracture. I know, because one of my students came back from the doctor's office here where I live, and he handed me his little medical excuse from his doctor why he couldn't train properly. He's still trained, but not properly. And listed on it, even though the vast majority of it was written in the Hebrew language, standing right out to the side was in English, boxer's fracture. It was very nice to know, and I informed him that I did not appreciate the fact that one of my students, and he was advanced at that point, broke his hand through improper punching. But I have to admit, He did not have a Makiwara at home. A lot of people, in fact, most people, do not have a Makiwara at home. If you put one of those things, one of those foam padded things on your wall, it doesn't give you enough give. It can actually damage your wrist, damage your knuckles, damage your arm. And by the way, most people don't punch properly. They punch with their elbow out. Don't do that. Your elbow is supposed to be down. That is right, pointing towards the ground all of the way. No matter how you work your hand, until you're actually working hooks. Yeah, until you're actually working hooks or crosses, your elbow is down when you strike. I see so many people punching. Their wrists are bent incorrectly. They're hitting with the bottom knuckle. Their elbows are on the outside. And the end result from them is that they will never be able to properly punch and deliver the power that they're capable of delivering. And if they do develop some power, the chance is great that they're going to damage their elbows, damage their wrists, damage bones in their hand. I don't want that for my students. By the way, this was a requested radio show. I made this was so you can properly make a good equivalent to what the Okinawans have used for hundreds of years, and develop your strikes, your punches, so that you can hit someone properly. Now, should you kick this thing? No. Can you use other strikes on it? Yeah. But that's not its purpose. It's really not its purpose. You can stand to the side and you can strike it with your hammer fist. I don't recommend whatsoever hitting with the back knuckles. I always say use your hammer fist, twist the forearm so that the bones are striking like a 2x4 with the edge. If you hit with the flat, you can break your arm. So hit with the edge of your forearm, which means you have to use your hammer fist, because as soon as you attempt to use your back knuckle, you put your arm in the wrong position. I know this for a fact. I saw a very highly rated professional karate fighter do a spinning back knuckle, and by golly, he ran into the guy's head with his forearm and maybe pins in the arm. Yeah, they actually had to put pins in it to hold his arm so it would grow back in the proper position. And basically, it did not do him any good. That's life. I'm trying to train you so you do not run into these problems. All right. This segment, this radio show is over. You will have lots of little photographs. Well, you had lots of little photographs to see exactly what I was talking about. And I hope that you have somewhere that you can place a Makiwara and practice diligently every day. Every day. You should hit that baby a minimum, I'm not joking, a minimum of 100 strikes. Yeah, that's a lot. It's every day. But what will happen is to your advantage and massively to the disadvantage of anyone you decide to strike. So, again, from beautiful downtown Faro de Mime. In fact, that's my back porch. You saw in the pictures, that was my front porch in the beginning. But where I put the Makiwara was on the back porch. But I still have full range of movement and can hit it all I want. Thank you very much for listening. Train safely. Train constantly and often. Then it will become a part of you. I had friends that when I came back from Korea complained mightily. Everything I was doing, they said, was cheating. Couldn't I just fight? It wasn't real fighting. It was mock. They were wrestlers. But couldn't I just do what we were playing with without using that karate stuff? Well, that's when I kind of thought about it, and I discovered that there wasn't anything but it. I couldn't not do it because that was the only thing that I knew or could do. My body automatically responded, and believe me, that was way back then. That's when I was not all that good. And believe me, I'm smart enough to know that back then I was terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. Jim Harrison never insulted me, but through his example and his speech patterns as he spoke to me, the way he taught me, he helped me to understand that I was not good enough. And he encouraged me, very much so, he encouraged me to train properly and to become something much better and much greater than what I was. Is the main reason I am what I am today. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening. I will now stop recording. Bye-bye.